So I recently bought a 95 XLT, and after doing every possible thing that I could think of, I still could not get it to run right. After a little research, I discovered that one of the issues these motors have is that the crankshafts become twisted. So after exhausting all other options, I checked the phasing of the crankshaft and discovered that that was the problem. I thought I'd make a brief video showing you how to do this. It's really simple geometry. Three-cylinder engine fires every 120 degrees. So we're going to use the perimeter of the drive clutch here to construct a degree wheel. And then we're going to see how the crankshaft relates to top dead center across all three cylinders. So I use masking tape. And I'm simply going to apply masking tape all the way around the circumference of that rim. And then we need a means of finding top dead center. Now, I'm a machinist, so I've got a dial indicator floating around at all times. So I can drop this indicator into the cylinder. And when I rotate this around, you'll see the needle rotate and then begin to fall again. So right there is where top dead center is. Now I need a means of marking this tape, and I also need a pointer that's going to point at where top dead center is. So you can make a pointer with a piece of wire. You could take another magnetic base for an indicator and just stick it somewhere on the motor, but there's a lot of aluminum here, so that makes it a little bit tricky. I'm going to construct a pointer out of a piece of wire. Okay, so here's I used a piece of TIG weld-in wire. I mounted it using that screw for the carb boot there. You could use coat hanger or any piece of wire. And I'm going to make a mark with a Sharpie right at that location. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that tape. And I'm going to cut it right where that line is. It doesn't have to be, as long as it goes back on the same way it came off. So I'm just going to mark this tooth so I can figure out where that is when I go to reinstall it. And I'm going to slit it. And I'm going to unpeel this. And just for good measure, I'll put a mark on the clutch. Peel it off from the other direction this time. Okay. Now I'm going to stick this onto my bench, and I'm going to take a tape measure, and I'm going to measure the overall length. Alright, so with the tape measure on here, I get 24 inches 19/16. So what I'll do is I'll divide 24 19/16 by 3, and that gives me roughly 8 1/4 inches. So I'm going to mark off 8 1/4, and then I can also mark off 16 1/2, which is an additional 8 1/4 from there. And I can verify that this is right by measuring between the second and the third mark. That's 8 1/4, and then the last mark in the end. Now this is not a super precise degree wheel. This really is helpful for diagnosing a problem or looking at a sled in the field that you want to determine the overall health of the engine. I'm going to re-adhere this. And you can get a little bit more fussy with the measurements, but for the sake of the video and the fact that my camera is also my calculator, I'm just doing the math in my head. All right, so there we go. And the degree wheel or tape is now reinstalled. I can find top dead center, and I can ensure that my pointer lines up well with that first mark. Okay. So if I rotate it around, observing my dial indicator, there is top dead center. You can zero it if you want, but it doesn't really matter. You're just looking for that moment of dwell at the top. And we can align our pointer. Now what we're going to do is move the indicator to the middle cylinder. We're going to find top dead center again, and when that piston comes up, I have to lower the indicator. Okay, there's top dead center. You can see that aligns with this other mark. Now that's not the same mark. The first mark had the slip. So I'll actually number these from the PTO side. We'll make that number 1. And then this one we'll call number 2. Not sure how Polaris numbered these. And then the next mark is going to be for the mag side. So I'll move the indicator into this hole. Find top dead center. Okay, right there it is. And we are way off. So I'll make a dotted line here to represent where top dead center falls on that cylinder. And we are like 2 inches off on the circumference from where we want to be. And what this tells us is that on this cylinder, which is closest to the stator, there was a twist in the crankshaft between this cylinder and the middle cylinder, and these two are probably, well, we just confirmed they are in phase with one another, 120 degrees, but these two are not in phase with this one, because I should have hit top dead center right when I aligned with that mark, and I did not. Now this is down and dirty, an easy way. If you took more time, you could even make it more accurate. But we're not degreeing the camshaft here, we're just verifying that the crankshaft isn't out of whack. If you don't have an indicator, you could even do this with a screwdriver. I'm going to put this stubby screwdriver down in the cylinder, and when I bring it around to this first cylinder, you'll see this is rising. And if you're careful, you can kind of find that moment of dwell, and sure enough, it realigns with that mark that we made with the dial indicator. And then you can repeat that same technique on each of these cylinders, and you really don't even need that dial indicator, although the dial indicator is a little bit more accurate. So yeah, this motor, I've determined it definitely has a twisted crankshaft, and from talking with some Polaris triple aficionados, what most likely happened is one of the cylinders got hydrolocked and it caused a twist in the crankshaft. It could have been a result of a leaky needle and seat, so always be careful with these engines. The twisted crankshaft is a major problem. This is going to require tear down and reassembly or reorienting of the crankshaft. Make sure that you don't have any fuel in the cylinder when you go to start it. Maybe pull it over by hand a little bit. If it sits for a long time, you can take the plugs out of the crankcase to make sure it's drained down. And I made it my practice of always turning off the fuel at the fuel valve.